What are you afraid of? Erica was a client who hired me to help her get out of a hospital job. We got off to a great start, but about 2, 3 weeks in of our coaching sessions, I noticed she wasn't following through on her action steps. You see, after every coaching session, we end the call with very clear, smart goals that I know when she's going to do things, and I follow up with her to make sure she's doing it, but she wasn't doing them. So I confronted her with a compelling but uncommonly asked question: what's stopping you from taking action? Erica's response didn't shock me. She began to tell me a story of how she should be happy and how she felt guilty about her discontentment. She thought she should be satisfied with her life, even though she was desperately wanting out of her job. I pressed her with a few more questions, and Erica revealed an underlying fear. Once she finished her assigned action steps, people would notice that she was making a change in her life, and she didn't want that unnecessary attention. Look, I told her, if you're trying to find a new job, you better hope someone notices. If no one notices, then you'll never get referred to a new position. Our call continued, but as we neared the end of our session, something was still bugging me. We had spoken for about over an hour, but I felt as though we hadn't really unearthed the real reason Erica was holding herself back. So I pried more in her desire to avoid attention, and that's when she told me an interesting truth that she had never told anyone else. She was afraid her father would find out that she was looking for a new job. Why don't you want that? I asked. Erica poured out her fears in response to my question. She would probably have to move away from her current area, and that would mean she wouldn't see her dad as often. Her father loved her, but didn't have a good way of communicating his feelings, so he would berate Erica if she brought up how much she hated her position. Her father didn't want her to be unhappy, but for him, being unhappy in a career was a regular part of everyday life. Erica didn't want to accept that, but she needed to communicate to her dad that she loved him and wanted his approval to seek a new position. It's anyone's guess what's stopping you from living the life you've always wanted. Maybe you think your spouse will judge you. Maybe you believe no one else will support you. Maybe you don't believe you deserve to have what you want. Maybe you'll fail. Whatever fear you have about your goals, it will do its best to keep you stuck. Fear is a natural and healthy thing to have. In fact, it's integral to human survival. Fear drove us to fight or flight when faced with a deadly situation. But there's a third response too: freeze. You're unlikely to encounter a mountain lion, but you still have the same fear responses hardwired into your brain as your caveman ancestors. Fear keeps you safe, and unfortunately, fear also holds you back in your comfort zone. Fear protects you from failure, public speaking, looking stupid, rejection, constructive feedback, and many situations that you could benefit from. I help people overcome fear. Anyone can overcome these things, but what determines your success is how willing you are to be uncomfortable. That's what part 3 is all about. Let's talk about what scares you. Name your fears. How long have you been dealing with this? I asked. I've been beating myself up since I was a child, she answered. Elena and I were working together on helping her transition into medical affairs. In one session, we discussed her action steps, and she shared how she was distracted lately. I asked why and found out that she was waking up in the middle of the night multiple times every night. She bluntly stated, I ask myself questions like, is something off? Or what did I do wrong today? Or what could I have done differently? These thoughts weren't just about her career transition, it was about everything: conversations at work and with her in-laws and decisions with her family. She shared that her thoughts constantly plague her with what-if scenarios. I've been doing this for decades, she said. Eleanor's voice sounded strained, like she was holding back tears. I asked, when did this all start? Since I was a child, she answered. During her childhood, she grew up in a traditional Indian home. She was the firstborn, and in her household, this was a bad thing. Her grandfather purported that the firstborn should have been a boy, and nothing good would come from her. She aimed to prove them all wrong by going to college, getting a PharmD, and having a successful career. Despite being quite accomplished, her never-ending self-doubt caused Erica stress and anxiety every day. How have you tried to combat this mental habit? I asked. She replied that she hadn't found a successful strategy. Your fear holds you tightly in your comfort zone, far away from your zone of genius. Elena's negative thoughts kept her from taking action in her career. The first step to overcoming fear is acknowledging them. Fear likes to be amorphous. One minute, your fear will tell you that you'll never succeed. The next minute, it says that you'll fail once you achieve a small amount of success. A classic example I see is my clients receiving a job offer, the very thing they work so hard to achieve, only to fear that they will fail at the job once it starts. They're always surprised to learn that plenty of others grapple with the same anxiety. You too may be surprised just how much your fear diminishes once you pull it out of your head. So name the fear, write it down. What is it saying to you? Your fear may sound like, no one will give me a chance. There's no way I can find a job in my town. What if people think I'm stupid for saying this? You take away fear's power by putting it down on a page. It's like you're striking a nail straight through fear's amorphous body, stopping it from changing and writhing into another fear. I like to ask next, what's the worst possible thing that could happen if the fear comes true? Often the answer is nothing consequential. I could bounce back from this failure. Stepping into an indispensable career means taking risks, looking foolish, and facing fear and possibly rejection. Simply writing your fears down won't help you stop them from coming back. You need a strategy to overcome your worry when the fear pops up again. Overcome roadblocks. Fear will stop you at some point. Becoming indispensable means taking risks. You have to put yourself out there to get noticed by your next employer or customer. Being willing to become great at what you are means others will judge you. They'll see you differently. Unless you're ready for this change, it will slow you down. It's not a matter if roadblocks happen, but when. You may not think it will, but it will show up somehow. You'll distract yourself with entertainment or a new side project, or you'll redouble your efforts at your job. Fear wants to keep you safe. Let's go step by step what to do the next time fear stops you in your career strategy. Then we'll walk through a real example of how I use the following 5 steps. I learned this approach from Gay Hendricks and have adapted the process here. 1. Identify the fear. 2. Turn your focus elsewhere. 3. Ask yourself, what is the new positive thing coming into being? 4. Focus on the new thing and all the emotions it causes. 5. Reflect later on the new thing and the cause of the worry. Let's start at the beginning. Identify the fear. An all too common fear most pharmacists have when transitioning is money. Money is often reported as the thing holding us back from all sorts of decisions, especially career transitions. I have the same fear. As I write this, I transitioned into my business full-time. My business is now the sole income for my family, and because of this, I experience all sorts of fearful doubts about my inability to provide. Around September 2017, my financial fears were getting so bad that I knew the real reason why I stopped growing my business was because I was afraid of failure. I was afraid that if I made more money, I would get big-headed, and I think I could live off of my own business. Counterintuitive, I know, but I was afraid my ego would lead me to make a scary decision. to quit my day job and to live off of the business. Rather than work at an easy job, 8 to 5, and get paycheck every 2 weeks, I would be solely responsible for my family's well-being. And that responsibility terrified me. One day while at work, I remember feeling anxious about the decision to make my business full-time, a feeling similar to what my clients feel when making a transition, potentially to something where they may earn less money. I acknowledged my fear and I wrote it down in my daily planner. I'm afraid I will fail my family, especially our financial needs. Writing down my fear helped keep me from the frantic thinking that leads to even more awful thoughts like, you'll fail to grow your business. You'll have to go back to your old job. You'll hate the future you're creating. Everyone will know that you're a hack and a failure, and so on. Fear loves to spiral your mind into something bigger, like anxiety. Immediately after writing down this fear, I turned my focus away from it. The next step. On a side note, this fear can easily turn you into inaction. You may want to transition into your career, but you're too afraid of what people may say, or how they may reject you, and so on and so forth. Look, you need to do this exercise because it's going to be the thing that helps you break free from it. I still do this exercise to this day. Turn your focus elsewhere. I put this worry into an imaginary ball and throw it away. Literally. Sounds weird, right? I found it weird at first too, but it helps shift my focus by doing something physical. I can then reset my thinking. It's as if I'm telling my brain to move away from fear to hope. Simply telling myself, stop thinking those negative thoughts, works about as well as telling yourself to not think about a pink elephant. You're thinking about a pink elephant right now, right? But shifting the mind away from the fear to the new thing that's coming into being works like a charm. Move your body, do an exercise, or simply mentally throw it away if you can't physically shift your focus away. If I'm working with a client one-on-one and they keep running into a roadblock, I know that they're fearful about something. And one of the interesting questions I like to ask in this process, because we'll do this, this process one-on-one, and I ask people this fear that you are giving up. Imagine it's a weight on your shoulders and you're sloughing it off. It's like you're rolling your shoulders as if you're letting go of a backpack. How heavy was that weight? And people often describe it being, I've never heard anyone say less than 100 pounds. Imagine going through life carrying on another 100 pounds of your own weight. This exercise can be freeing, so let's move on to the next step. Ask yourself, what's the new positive thing coming into being? I ask myself, what's the new thing coming into being? And I verbalize the question and begin jotting down the different things I'm excited about my business. I write down 10,000 pharmacists become inspired to pursue new and happy career paths. 100 new pharmacy tech companies are born and employed by pharmacists thanks to my mentoring efforts. By 2019, the business funds 2 family adoptions. My business makes more than enough money to live off of 20% of the income, giving or investing 80% of the rest. Looking at this list makes me feel so much better. You see, you're fearful about something great happening. You really are. Something great is just around the corner, but your fear is afraid that it won't happen. If your brain is focused on the fear and the awful things happening, then that's what may happen. That could be the future. Or more likely, you'll just be driven to not take action. But when you think about the positive things, about what it is that you are concerned about, because for me in this financial situation, I'm worried about me failing. But what's the new positive thing coming into being? Well, it's hopefully a successful growing business that's inspiring generations of pharmacists for years to come. That gets me excited. If you write down or say things that are negative, then you haven't shifted your focus away from fear yet. This is a common occurrence because your brain has developed its fear habit years ago, and you've been practicing for likely decades. Your brain is fighting a new way of thinking by imagining more fearful outcomes. If this is what you do, if you write something down negative after asking this question, then revisit step 2. Go back and try shifting your focus away. Get up, change your environment, put the fear into a ball and chuck it as far as you can throw it. And then ask the question again. Shifting your focus away and asking this question can hopefully emotionally get you into a new mode. And that's the next part. Focus on the new thing and all the emotions it causes. As I wonder these things, I focus on where in my body I feel this excitement. I'm not a mushy, gooey, touchy-feely, life coach. That's not what I am. Hopefully you've picked that up by now. Logan, starring Hugh Jackman, was the last movie I cried at the end, of course. I mean, no spoilers as to what happens. It was a great movie. But despite my ego and avoidance of, pseudoscience or emotional science, things of those natures, I've learned that our emotions influence every single decision we make. You could argue that you make logical decisions, but economic, psychological, and health research offer strong evidence that we are emotional decision makers. Just think about all the people who don't take their medications as prescribed. Logically, their health should be a top priority, but people don't reason logically. We skip exercise routines, avoid difficult conversations, hit the snooze button, binge on Netflix series, or go on buying sprees. In order to solidify a new direction away from fear, I found it helpful to focus emotionally on the new direction in my body. I typically find that I have a swelling in my chest when I get excited, so I'll focus on this feeling as long as I can. I don't think about anything else. I just enjoy the moment, savoring every single second of my excitement. Occasionally, I'll shed a tear because I just get overly excited about what will happen. This is so important for you to do because if you don't take this step, if you don't emotionally connect with the new thing that you're excited about, well, you will likely revert back to your thinking of fear and anxiety and worry. Why is that? It's because we're not logical creatures. You can't just show yourself, I'm excited about getting a new job. Okay, yeah, but reality comes back, right? It'll come back to you and hit you like a wave because you've built the habit of fear and thinking that way for years. When you emotionally connect with the new thing, you are rewiring your brain. You are trying to make it so that the brain is focused on the new thing and is moving in that direction. Reflect after the exercise on the cause and new direction. Either the next day or later the same day, I will reflect on this experience. If all went well, I won't relapse into fear. My new direction will drive me forward, and I'll be focused on my task at hand. But occasionally, I will slip back into fear and be driven into inaction or just plainly worrying. In these cases, I've found it's because I've skipped a step or I didn't fully address the worry. When I skip, it's usually because I tell myself something like, okay, you've moved past this fear. Time to focus on the next thing. I don't enjoy the positive feeling as long as I can. I rush the process, and eventually my emotions will turn back to my fear, and I'll have to repeat the 5 steps all over again. In my example, I later reflected on the cause of my fear. I noted that what kickstarted my financial anxiety was reviewing my credit card payment. My wife typically handles the payments, but I was reviewing finances of the business and noticed a larger than normal credit card bill past its payment due date. I know, shame on you, Alex, right? My wife and I reviewed all of our major purchases before buying, so none of the purchases were a surprise to me, but the total amount was a jaw dropper. It stirred up an emotional, fearful question. Can you really do entrepreneurship if you're messing up now, even when you have two sources of income. I realized that the fear was only caused by the amount of credit card payment and resolved myself to be adamant about paying my credit cards on time, as to avoid late fees and large sums accruing. Megan agreed and vowed to support paying off the credit card monthly. What are your fears? It isn't a matter of if, but when. A roadblock will appear to stop you from your progress. A distraction will pop up or halt you from emailing a manager. An interruption disguised as an opportunity will appear. Your brain will do just about anything to create an escape from addressing your fears. It'll even convince you that your fears are entirely rational. So can you commit to overcoming those practical fears?